Ba 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 ba. Well, hi everybody. It's me, your dear friend, Cookie, Michael V. Smith, with Have I Told You the One About? Have I told you the one about? Well, today, I just have to say, today is a bit of a shit show. This is what they call it in my hometown, a shit show. That's when everything you plan to happen falls apart and there's nothing that you expect to happen is going to happen. So, first, I need to send apologies out to the wonderful and amazing Shimshan, who was supposed to be my guest tonight, but the video cacked out and I can't sort shit out and I have to figure it out. So, Shimshan is probably going to be on Monday. There's a little bit of business I need to do because since I've been having guests on my show, I have not been doing them live. It's a live broadcast. It's just not a live recording with the people for obvious reasons, right? People live at a different time zone. They have children. They have other responsibilities. Trying to get them at 8 o'clock. And to be honest, technology is fucking shit. This is what I say to technology. I'm two-fisting technology today. Technology is tricky. So even when I record, sometimes I have to re-record because things go fucky. So tonight, those things, or this afternoon, when I was recording my dear friend Shimshan, things went fucky. Anyways, so that means at the 11th hour, with 2 minutes to spare, I realized I wasn't going to be able to broadcast my story tonight with the wonderful Shimshan. So I'm just going to have to tell you a story that I have no idea. I've run out of stories. Literally, my magic story bag. Oh, my magic story bag is empty. Well, okay, there's one card in here, and I won't tell you what it is because I already decided I didn't want to tell that story because I might get in trouble. So my magic story bag is empty. Magic story bag, you have failed me, you useless. So I've decided I'm just going to improvise a story that I thought up seconds before I went live, thanks to my dear, amazing husband. So tonight's story is house hunting. Here we go. Way back when, how long ago was this? We've been in this house 5 years. 8 years ago. So I moved to Kelowna, and when I moved here, I had hardly any furniture. All my stuff I left in Vancouver, and everything I kind of owned in my old life, being a poor, starving artist, everything that I owned came from people who just took pity on me and they gave me things. So I got a kitchen table from somebody that I worked with, and I bought a futon couch for myself, and I got a desk from some secondhand place, and I got, everything. A dresser came from another friend. So it was none of the stuff that I actually really wanted for myself. So when I moved here for a fancy job to Kelowna, 4 hours away from Vancouver, I thought, well, I'm not going to take all these things with me because, like, why even pay to have the mover move things? Like, I'm moving into a friend's house, la, la, la. And I lived with a friend for 3 years, and then she went a little whoo-hoo and got kind of with me. So I moved out. And I moved into my own place. I moved into a 2-bedroom place so I could have friends over and all of that great stuff. And the fascinating thing with being 30, how old was I then? 8 years ago. I was 41 years old, and I had probably only bought 2 pieces of new furniture in my life. My futon that I slept on, and I had an old set of, a set of dresser drawers that were back in Cornwall in my hometown that I never moved out. Those are the only 2 pieces of furniture I ever bought new. Everything else was a hand-me-down or was secondhand, which is another kind of hand-me-down. And suddenly I had a job and I had money. I could buy furniture slowly. And so I furnished this 2-bedroom place. And I had this weird experience of being 41 years old. I don't know, it's weird. Like, other people have jobs and they go out and they do things, but I was working part-time. And so I suddenly realized I could buy furniture, like I could buy a couch. It'd be good to own a couch for the first time in my life. And I didn't know what kind of couch I liked because I'd never bought a couch. Like, I had this weird experience of suddenly realizing when I had moved into a new place that I lived on my own, of realizing, I guess, capitalist culture, right? Consumerist culture. I didn't know what kind of person I was or what aesthetics I had for making a home because I'd only ever had hand-me-downs. So I had this really exciting experience of figuring out who I was, I guess you could say, what I liked, what my home life aesthetics were for the first time ever at 41. It was such a weird experience. So when I only lived in that one bedroom or that two-bedroom place that where I live solo, I only lived in that place for about 6 or 7 months or something like that. I had a management company, and the management company cacked out on me. The He couldn't get a hold of the owner who I had to give my checks to, and I didn't know where to send them. So after 3 months of living there, suddenly I didn't have anybody to give a check to. The owner never got a hold of me. The management company quit. And they said they would forward info, and they never did. And I called them, and they said, "Oh, yeah, I sent your info to dude. I'm not allowed to share it." It was so weird. It was all really sketchy. Anyways, so for 3 months, I lived in this place rent free because I didn't have anybody to give a check to. And I decided, okay, well, screw this. I was really worried because I had a strata and he hadn't been paying his strata fees. And the people I knew people on the strata board, and they said, "Oh yeah, he hasn't paid his strata fees. So what's probably going to happen is he's bailing on the mortgage and the strata fees." And this is when the dollar really dropped. There was that little recession 8 years ago. And so they said this guy is probably just going to not pay his mortgage and he's going to lose it. And one day somebody's going to knock on your door and say, "You have to move out because your place has been sold out from under you." And the bank's repossessing it or whatever happens, something like that. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to look for a place and buy a place because I can save up a little down payment and take, some savings. I borrowed some money from a friend. I was really desperate. I didn't want to get booted out. I didn't want to look for another place. And I thought, fuck landlords. I'm just going to own my own place. So I asked friends. They hooked me up with this lesbian, Ellen Churchill. If you live in Kelowna and you want a realtor, Ellen Churchill is the bomb. Ellen has super straight white blonde hair, straight bangs. She sings jazz music and other songs. She has a voice of an angel, and she's a lesbian, and she's super femme. So we got along like a house on fire, and she just taught me everything that I needed to know about buying a place. We went to apartments and lofts and condos and houses with rental suites. I had no idea what I actually wanted to buy. I said, I kind of like a loft or something. I don't know. But it was the same experience. I didn't know what kind of couch I wanted. And suddenly I had to decide on like the largest purchase of my entire life. I decide what I actually wanted to live in and what that I could afford. And it was just this mind-blowing, and I was single. I didn't have anybody to rely on. It was this mind-blowing experience of feeling really naive. And, my sister had moved out when she was 16 and a half. And she bought her first place with her partner. I don't know. They were in their 20s. Like I was 20 years behind her. They had a vehicle and they had homes and they moved to, new homes. They had a swimming pool and, they did the things that people in small towns can afford to do. Anyways, and being an artist, it was such a strange foreign. If I felt like I didn't know who I was all over again. In some ways, it felt like sort of like when you break up with somebody and then all of a sudden you realize there are all these other rooms to the house of who you are, and you don't know what your patterns are anymore. You don't know where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to do, and you're not sure about your friends and everything. You break up with someone long term and suddenly you feel like you're in a whole new world. Nothing's really changed. You just don't know who you are anymore. I felt the same way trying to buy a place. I was like, I don't know anything about this. I don't know what. Anyways, so Ellen took me to a million different things because I didn't have a clue. we had this, we had a whole bunch of, we had a lot of fun. We had a whole bunch of catchphrases. So when the biggest catchphrase was, I would look at a place, and at most places, when you look for a two bedroom, the bedrooms are side by side. But every once in a while, you would get a place where one bedroom was on one end of the suite and another bedroom was on the other end of the suite, and I called them blowjob bedrooms. And at first, she was like, "What do you mean a blowjob bedroom?" I'm like, "Well, if you're getting a blowjob in that bedroom, the person in this bedroom probably can't hear. Not the way if the walls were, a blowjob bedroom isn't when two bedrooms share a wall. That's not a blowjob bedroom. I wanted bedrooms that were a little bit discreet, just in case my mom was over and I wanted to have somebody in the other. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just thought I want bedrooms that are not attached by a single wall. It was one of the few things I knew about looking for an apartment that I was going to buy. Anyways, we found a loft eventually. She taught me a million things. We ended up going through so many different kinds of, because I thought, oh, well, maybe I should get this and maybe I should get a place that with a rental. I almost bought a house and it freaked me the fuck out. Weirdly, it was the same feeling I got when I walked on lava. I only felt it 3 times in my life. I said 2, but I remember there was a third. When I walked on, saw new fresh formed lava, and I thought I was going to fall through and die. And turns out I almost did fall through and die. When I met the mechanic from the story, The Mechanic, where my life was in jeopardy, I think. And when I went to buy this house, I had the same weird, deep-seated fear, like, you are doing something fundamentally wrong. Do not buy this house. So I didn't buy the house. I bought this condo instead. Anyways, so I lived in the condo for 3 years, and then I met my husband. And this is house hunting. This isn't condo hunting. That sounds so fucking waspy. Anyways, when I met Francis, he was living in Toronto, and he decides that he's going to move to the Okanagan and move to Kelowna. I always said that I had to import a husband into this place, so I did. He only had a job for the first year we were dating. He had a job, and then the contract was done. And he said, well, we're engaged. We got engaged within 6 months. We're engaged. I'm going to move to the Okanagan because you've got a steady job and I'll just find work, which was amazing. So we packed up his place and we moved him here. And when he moved in, it was fine, but we had all these boxes of all of his stuff. I had a full apartment. I had furnished everything in those 3 years. And he said, well, why don't we get a house? Because, this is your place and I'm moving into your place and all the things are already there. And it just doesn't feel like my place. And the advantage of living in a house is then we'd have a yard, which during COVID-19, I have to say it's very nice to have a fucking yard. I recognize I have an enormous privilege, right? That just goes without saying. I am incredibly lucky that I live in a house and I have a yard. And he said, we should have a yard. I'd like to have a garden. It'd be good to, have yard parties in the yard. And that really convinced me. And he said, don't worry about like cutting the grass and shit like that. I've owned a house before. I know how to do it. Because I was kind of intimidated by all the domestic stuff. Work was overwhelming. I didn't need any more responsibilities. So anyways, we called up Ellen Churchill and said, hey, we're looking for a new place, something with a blowjob bedroom. So she takes us all around to all these places to look at, all these different houses. And suddenly one day, I'm very obsessive, and she gave me this little trick of how to look for houses before they got listed publicly. She gave me like a back door that I could look at. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that because I don't know if everybody gets the back door. But she created a little set of parameters where I could look within those parameters. It went by cost and how many bedrooms and bathrooms and la. And then the things would materialize one day before they would be on the public website. So I'm looking at everything like 20 times a day. I hit refresh. Sometimes I would hit refresh 20 times in an hour because I'm a little OCD, and so I would just do that. So I see this house that pops up, and I call Ellen and I say, okay, I found a house I want to have a look at. It's in a nice neighborhood. It's the neighborhood we want to live in. It's not far from downtown, and it looks like a pretty good house. And she says, "Oh, I don't see it. It's not on the site." I'm like, "Oh, you have to hit refresh," because I just hit refresh and it popped up. And so she hit refresh and there was this house. So she made an appointment. They were going to show for the first time, they were going to show the next morning. We're the first people to see the house. So we show up at the place. Ellen doesn't say a word to us about it. She just brings us to the house. And the guy who owns the house has flipped it. He bought it off of some people who had renters in it, and I think the owners died. It'd been in the house for the house had been in the family for quite some time. And we first toured the yard, and the yard was, pretty. This was in September. There were, some flowering bushes and a bunch of trees, and there was a fruit tree. There was an apricot tree in the yard. And that was really sweet. So we tour the whole yard, and then we go into the house, and the guy who bought the house and flipped it, he was working on it. He wasn't finished doing the flip, doing the renos, and he comes out to meet us. And Ellen is like, she was very professional, but I knew from having toured with her before that this isn't what is done. You don't meet the owners. I met the owner of this other house that I was really interested in, and Alan gave me an earful after about what bad form it was, to just let me know. But this guy was naive. He'd never flipped anything before. It was the first time he'd ever done it, flip something. And so he was doing the renos himself, and he got friends in to do the renos and everything else. And I remember we were standing out. It's funny because I'm in the house telling the story. We were out in the yard, and he said, "Okay, well, you should come in and see the basement." Ellen very smartly said, "We're going to see the basement first," because she always stacked the deck in favor of being great. So you see the basement, and then you see the upstairs, and the upstairs is better than the basement, and that makes you appreciate the place more. Because you don't want to start from the top and then work your way down to the lesser thans. You want it to just steadily improve. It's very smart. It's also good storytelling, right? The story of how you tour your house. You meet the yard first, and then the basement, and then the upstairs. Anyways, it was elegant. I liked it. And we toured the basement, and Francis and I looked at each other and were like, "We live in this basement." I'm like, "This is the basement?" It was, there were some things he hadn't done and other things he had, but whatever. It was in pretty good shape, especially for a basement, for somebody who grew up in a blue collar house that was a wartime tiny little thing. It was like 900 square feet maybe, and it was a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. It was really small. So this was like pretty swish for me. And then we went upstairs, and the upstairs had a gas fireplace. And I was like, a gas fireplace? And Ellen had said, "Okay, whenever you're looking for a place, you need to do your wish list. And my advice," she says, "is to pick your top 10 things that you want on your wish list. So just dream big, like whatever it is. It could be, I want a gateway to, I don't know what, a portal to the water, or I don't know, something. You just think big." Those are terrible examples. But so I thought big. I was like, okay, well, what do I actually want in my dream house? I wanted hardwood floors. I wanted windows where people couldn't see in if I walked around naked. And we got that more or less, but people can see you naked from the waist up, but they can't see you naked from the waist down. So that's okay. I'll take it. And I wanted a nice yard, and we wanted to have room for guests. And anyways, I had really simple things on my list. But one of the things I had was I wanted a dogwood tree, because my grandpa Smith, who I wasn't crazy about, but he had a dogwood tree, and I always fucking loved that tree. When I'd go visit, and it would be once a year, if you were lucky, you'd hit it when it was blooming. And sure enough, out front, we didn't even know this when we bought the goddamn house. Nobody had told us. We had to wait until spring came, and in the spring, this tree in the front yard started to change, and I don't know anything about plants. It was a dogwood tree, and I had to wait we moved in the end of October, 2 days before Halloween. We had to wait all the way until May to know that the tree in the front yard was a dogwood tree, and it's the most glorious tree you'll ever see in your life. It's amazing. And there were really pretty roses out front and whatever. So I got all these things that were on my top 10 list, which was just kind of like crazy. So we're, looking at the house, checking everything off. Dude's still fixing things. He's all over the place. He keeps talking to us about the place. And when I leave, I say, okay, well, nice to meet you. I'll see you later. This was 9 a.m. We were the first people to tour the house. And I had to go to work. I had to teach that afternoon. So we went for a quick little coffee with Ellen, and she said, what do you think? And I was like, well, I think I like this house. And Francis was like, me too. I'm like, but I got to go to work. So we can't actually do anything right now. Let's just wait, and I'll check in with you after class at 3 o'clock. I'll check in and, we'll talk about it. So I go to teach. I call Francis when I'm done. I'm like, we should buy that house. We should put an offer on that house. And Francis said, yeah, we should definitely do that. So we meet Ellen at her office and we sit down, and she says, okay, I need to tell you two things. The first thing is somebody's already put an offer on the house. And we're like, that we only left that place. Oh, I don't even think it was 3 o'clock. I think it was like 1 in the afternoon or something. We'd only left the place like 4 hours before, and there was already an offer on the house. And the guy who put the offer on the house was a realtor who knew that the price of the house was too low, and he was going to buy it and flip it, because this is the second thing she needed to tell us. It was listed with 2% realty, and 2% realty means the realtor makes. I don't even think there is there is a realtor, but they only make 2%. Anyways, they make shit money. Yeah, I guess they make 2%. That's why I could call 2%. Anyways, so the realtor knew that if he bought it, he was the purchaser, so he wouldn't have to pay himself, and then he could resell it and make all the profit of selling it for whatever it is, 15%, or I don't know what the thing is. But he would make he could sell it for more than he had, and then he bought it, and he wouldn't, he'd be able to get his fees out of it. So he thought it was a really easy turnaround for him. So we offered a little bit more money. But here's the second thing. Because it was 2% realty, Ellen Churchill, God love her, the patron saint of realty, says, okay, I'm going to have to write a rationale for my firm, because Coldwell Banker doesn't let us buy things from 2% realty normally. You've looked at a whole bunch of things. You've already bought and sold a place with me before. You're selling this place, right? And then you're buying so it's two purchases and a sale. And I'd recommended her to other friends. So she said, you're a great client and a friend. I need to keep you happy. So I'm going to tell the story to the people here that we need to keep you happy. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take a hit. And so I'm not going to make hardly any money off of this sale, which is fine, because you're probably going to buy other things from me in the future. She's really smart. And I recommended her to 1 million people because she's amazing. And she knows all about blowjob bedrooms already, so you don't have to teach her. So she says, so I need to write up a report to explain why I'm doing this transaction and not just letting you like float off on your own because you want to do this thing that we don't normally do. So she did a whole bunch of extra labor in order to convince her firm to let us purchase the house through her, which was really fucking nice. And then we found out that he'd made all those renovations, but he hadn't taken out any tickets. And I don't know about where you live, but in Canada and in BC, if you want to make upgrades, you want to put in like a new gas line, which I think he did. If you want to like change, he closed in the floor and he changed some electricity. He made some really significant changes. You're not allowed to do that without a ticket. So we paid $6,000 more than the asking price, and we got it because he was hungry for money because he needed to sell this first place. He didn't have a lot of bank to bankroll. So he was really happy we offered more. So the realtor didn't get it, but we made it conditional that he had to get the tickets. And by magic, when he got all the tickets, they cost him about $6,000. So really, he just got all the tickets for us and we didn't have to worry about it. And it cost us the asking price of the house. Enormous amounts of magic, I have to say. So what else am I going to tell you? That's probably the climax of my story. The climax of my story is we got this fucking amazing house that we bought from a lesbian who adores us, who did us a huge favor. So in order to thank her, because we didn't want to just give her cash because that seemed weird, but we bought her a really fancy, like, whatever 2-day weekend at this really great spa resort that we know. And we recommended a million people to her afterwards. And she sold a bunch of houses there. So that's okay. But what a huge fucking favor she did for us. And we've been in this house 5 years, 4.5 years. And it's been phenomenal. And we've had all kinds of people through here. We've hosted friends who have moved in for 2 years at a time and 6 months at a time. My friend Denise was doing renos on a house that they bought, and she needed a place to live and she couldn't find anything. So we moved her and her family in here for 5 or 6 months. Anyways, we've had all kinds of people through here, and it's a goddamn godsend. And the last gift the house gave me was, it gave me kind of a story that I could tell tonight at the last minute for all of you who love me and continue to check in and say hello. You're fabulous people. I'm so glad you were here. I'm sorry to Shimshon and all of his fans that I didn't get it together. Now you know my dirty secret, that my shows are not recorded live, but they're broadcast live. But who cares, right? What's it matter? It means that you have fewer glitches. That's what it means. You're welcome. You can send me emails or pats on the back or your own house hunting stories at michaelvsmith.com. Michael V. Smith. You can click the notification bell and it'll tell you whenever I'm going live, when the story is broadcast live, which is 8 p.m. Pacific every night. I've got some really exciting people coming up. Tomorrow, I've got an extra special show because it's my 20-year sobriety anniversary. And so I'm mixing it up a little, and I'm doing a special anniversary show for that. It's 22 years of not drinking alcohol. So we're doing a little secret. You'll find out tomorrow. And you can like this page. There are 3 people who liked it, which is very sweet of you already. You can share any old story, and I will see you tomorrow for our special anniversary edition. I love you all. You're amazing people. That is, have I told you the one about last minute Jeopardy storytelling? Not terrible. I love you a lot. Bye.